Hi everybody. I've decided I want to do a video on indicators, and I kind of had a hard time deciding how broad or narrow I want to make the scope of this video, and then I realized, well, in reality, this video really is just about me basically digging out every single indicator that I can get my hands on that I own, so that I can take an inventory, take stock of what I have, and make some decisions about what I want to do with some of these, because I just have so many of them now at this point, and I don't need anywhere near this many. So I've got them all laid out all over the bench here. Matter of fact, I've kind of run out of room, but I've got all different types and styles. You can see them going off into the distance there. In the back area there, we've got a ton of drop indicators. So you can see I've got a whole bunch of drop indicators here. We've got some special indicators. We've got some interesting little indicators here and there. I even brought this big Federal bench micrometer over because it's got a Federal indicator in it. We've got electronic indicators. Here's an antique electronic indicator. Here's another look at some more. We've got some of the classics like the Best Test, the Starrett Last Word, and we'll talk more about those when we get around to them. Coaxial indicators, even some downright mystery indicators that I've never seen before and have not been able to find out information on. So we'll go right through a lot of these. Actually kind of ran out of room on the bench here, so we've got some overflow over here. So some of these will probably right off the bat, we'll just make some honorable mentions, describe them briefly, and then just move on. Oh, so I would classify this video as more of like a Cracker Barrel conversation about indicators. A time-honored Cracker Barrel was something that was found in general stores, and it was often where the farmers would gather and discuss all types of different subjects and just shoot the breeze. So just think of this as me shooting the breeze with you guys. If you're tool hoarders and tool mongers, you might enjoy seeing some of these indicators. Might be just fun to see. Some of these are in such bad shape you're probably thinking, why the heck did I even acquire them? Well, they probably were something I just picked up in a box lot with other stuff. Some indicators I have that I bought early on before I knew much about indicators and didn't realize that they weren't really that good quality. I've learned a lot about them since then. But if you're watching this video right now because you want to learn how to use indicators properly, this is not the video for that. This is just like I said, this is going to be a shoot in the breeze, taking a look at my collection, which essentially I want to be able to pare down. I just don't need to have all of these things sitting around all over the place. So without further ado, let me pause the camera here, get a little bit reorganized, and we'll go from there. A couple of these items right off the bat, I realize they really don't even belong in this conversation, because although they do indicate something, they don't indicate in the sense of what we're mostly concerned with in this video. So case in point, pardon the pun, I have the Miracle Point device right here. I just thought this was kind of a neat thing. So as you can see, it just kind of has a needle that flops around, and the way this basically works is this actually gets sat on top of a round piece of stock, and you can rotate this around until this reads 0, and then you're at the high point on that round piece of stock, and then there's a pin here so you can actually mark the very top. So it's a handy thing to have. I haven't actually used it yet, but when I first picked it up, I didn't know exactly how to use it at all, and then I went online and I saw some photographs and I think a write-up about these. So this is something that's very unique to this particular manufacturer. You can even see it's called the Eric Miracle Point Model 900. It was sold through MSC. Of course, everybody knows who MSC is, right? And then it says for repair, you got to call the Cullen Legois Manufacturing Company, Legois. But anyways, so we'll get that out of the way. Here's another very unique type of an indicator. This is made by a company called NCK of Japan, and although it looks sort of like an indicator, it's actually more like an inside caliper. You can see these two fingers right here. Push this button down, close this up, put this in between 2 points, and then actually measure. Light's not very good here. Kind of the direction the light's coming in, I'm casting a shadow. Hopefully you can see that. So that's something unique to this company. It's the NCK commercial type dial caliper gauge. That looks like it's brand new, never been used. Well, this next indicator I picked up at a sale. I think this was a Craigslist buy. I actually went there to buy some other items and ended up buying this. And I've never been able to find another one like this anywhere on the internet. But this is a very interesting indicator. You can see it's large in comparison to like that's about a standard size drop indicator. Dial face is about like that big, and you see how much larger it is. And it's marked center distance error, and it says 20 degree PA backlash, 14.5 degree. The company, it's actually, if I turn it upside down, the company says S&F type 4126 space 41 made in Germany. All right, now this whole outer dial turns, so it actually turns with the dial around that inner dial. It's kind of interesting. It acts like a drop indicator, and it's measured. This is the other thing I thought was interesting. Right here, if you notice, this is a 1/2 thousandths scale on here, but it's made in Germany, so I'm surprised. I actually would have thought maybe it would have been metric. But on the back, you can see the actual workings here are housed in a what almost like a normal sized indicator housing, but it's got this big face. When I got it, it was in this box, which has no markings on it, nothing to indicate what exactly this is for. And also these pieces right here were in here. This is clearly somebody made these for this to sit in. And there's another one there. So this is a bit of a mystery. I can't really put a value on it because I haven't been able to find one to compare it to. And there's nothing really on the box, so we'll put that one away. These indicators are housed in specialty mounts, which basically make them gauges. These two here are thickness gauges. So this one here, it's got a little trigger, and you can open this up and just snap this over a piece of sheet metal or whatever you want to measure. This is made by the Ames company. It's called the Ames Pocket Gauge. Nothing too fancy about that one. This one's made by Federal. This one's kind of neat. It's got a groove here on the housing on the bottom and a groove on the top, which lends itself to being held just like this. And you just clamp down on it on whatever you want to measure the thickness of. So that's kind of a neat one. And then this right here is, it's like a snap gauge where you would preset it to a particular diameter. Say you were turning several items and you all wanted them to be within this so many thousandths of the same diameter. You could keep this over by the lathe and preset this so that this would be zeroed at the correct diameter. So you can see this moves. This little foot right here moves. What you would have is you'd have a way to tell how many thousandths over in diameter you still were, so you'd know how much to take off. Or, consequently, if you took too much off, you'd know whether or not you were under. But anyways, that's basically what this is. So this is just a better version of a snap gauge. So here's an old snap gauge. So this could be set up to be like a go, no-go gauge, where you would set the diameter, set one of these to your diameter, your go diameter, and the other one to your no-go. So this one, unfortunately, it's damaged. Other than that, this probably was a pretty nice gauge. This one is made by, this one's also made in Germany. This is made by the Hahn and Kolb company of Stuttgart, Germany. So that's H-A-H-N and Kolb, K-O-L-B, of Stuttgart, Germany. Unfortunately, like I said, somebody did some damage to it here, and it's, you know, it's kind of rough. That's probably still a usable gauge. I don't think that's the kind of thing I would really see myself needing. I almost forgot about this one. This is made by Federal, and this is sort of like a another gauge like that one I just showed you, only it's more like on steroids. This is really a beefy, you know, nicely made piece. Unfortunately, you can see the rust on it here. It's in rough shape. But this is essentially, you pass this over whatever you're turning to check the OD and see how many thousandths away you are from where you want to be. And then this little donut right here is actually a standard, so that you can actually check this against this standard. That was probably a pretty expensive piece when it was new, and now it's you know, it needs some TLC, and quite frankly, I don't know if there's even much use for something like this these days. Maybe if you were turning camshafts or crankshafts in an automotive machine shop, this might still come in handy. This says identify as model 1330P-88-R1. But it's too bad that the moisture in the basement that this was stored in got to that. So this next device is what's known as a coaxial indicator, or also known as a centering indicator. And the way this works is there's a little feeler arm on the bottom here with a point, ball point on it. And this whole assembly actually rotates. So if I hold the body of this thing, I can actually turn this whole thing. Alright. And the way this works is you actually put this in a collet in the milling machine, and then this finger will go down inside of a bore. When it's rotated, when you have the central axis of this exactly located in the center of that bore, this indicator will not move. It'll stay in one place. So you can literally rotate the machine very slowly with this in the bore, and make adjustments to your X and Y axis, and bring the center line of your spindle directly over the center of a hole. And then there's different attachments for different size bores. This screws into the body, and this is just an arm that keeps this body from just rotating around and around, so that you can actually read it easily. And then there's like, oh, if I can get it out there, you can see that there's even like a really long feeler, so you can see that you can actually use this on some pretty large bores. And this one is made by Blake. That's B-L-A-K-E. Interesting thing to me about this is that I've never heard of this company until I was researching these coaxial indicators. And it turns out there's three main companies you tend to see these sold under. There's the Fowler, the Blake, and the SPI. And then I'd say the SPI, you would lump that in with also maybe Shars and any other of the import companies. Those are all going to be pretty much on par with each other. And the Blake, these older Blakes like this one here, judging from what they command for price on the used market, I would say that these are the ones that are trusted the most as being the highest quality. This one is far from mint condition, but it's in good working condition, and I got this for a really good deal. As a matter of fact, the guy had 2 of them, and I didn't need to, but I got such a good deal on the first one that I decided to go back and offer him money for the second one. This one needs to be cleaned up more. You can see this. This was probably, yeah, this has got that rotting foam cancer issue. But this one also actually works freely. It's operating well. So cleaned up, this will be a nice one for somebody. So I'm going to keep the one and part with the other. And it's the kind of thing you don't need, but it's a handy thing to have. So if you can buy it right, why not have one, right? Right. This next group of indicators are all mounted in specialty mountings, which in turn make these all hole or bore gauges. This is actually a regular Federal drop indicator, but when it's mounted in this configuration here, it ends up becoming a hole gauge. This has a little point on the bottom here. Okay. It looks like, yeah, it looks like that's a threaded hole, so there's probably supposed to be a point that goes on there. And then I believe what's supposed to happen on this indicator is that when you push on this point right there, you can see that little ball that moves in. I believe what's supposed to happen is we're supposed to get a indication up here. So for some reason, this doesn't work. This was exactly the way I found it. This should have been in probably a case with some attachments possibly. And instead, it had none of this stuff. So that's what leads me to believe that this is probably a broken or sick puppy. And again, I didn't give much for it because I realized that there was something up with this. And then I also found this one here. This was calibrated back in 2004. This is a Messner, M-E-S-S-N-E-R. Not familiar with that company. Although the small print says that this was made in Germany, so this probably also was a decent quality indicator in its day. This has this Diatest attachment on it right here. Okay, so if you look, this looks suspiciously like hole gauges, and this actually, when I squeeze this, you'll see that actually the dial is moving. It's a little sticky, but it's working. So this could be probably serviced and cleaned up. And this probably originally came in a case with several of these attachments, because I did find one other one. And you can see there's quite a difference between the hole sizes that this would go into this one. So I think between here and here, there was probably a couple, at least 2 or 3 more that went in here. This would have been part of a full set, and this probably would have been a nice handy thing to have. I don't know what I'm going to do with these yet, but they're marked Diatest. Well, the funny thing is, this one's marked Diatest, this one's not, and actually the thumb wheel looks a little bit different. This almost looks like it's a different manufacturer, maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this wouldn't work on here, though. Oh man, that's been on there a long time. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that alone. Here's another bore gauge. Came out of the same estate that I found this abuse thing in, and this is really in rough shape. All that's in the case is there's a little adjustment wrench. There's the main unit with one attachment, and the lens is missing. And as if that wasn't bad enough, this also, oh no, this moves a little bit. Look at that. That one's actually still working. But it's clear to see that originally, apparently it's a small hole gauge set, and apparently there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attachments for this. Wonder if maybe that's one of them. These are little tiny points. So I'm not even quite sure what was supposed to be in this kit. I'm sure if I looked it up online, I could probably find out. That could probably be sent out and serviced, but being that it's only good for one size now because it's missing all these other pieces, I don't know if it's even worth doing anything with that. This might be something just better off to sell for parts to somebody, or maybe somebody needs a case. This was due for calibration back in '97. So this next indicator is by a company called CEJ in Sweden. I actually forgot what that stands for, but this is called a microcator, and this is actually, I believe, what is known as a comparator. And this is like crazy sensitive. So this, instead of having the typical, thousandths of an inch on it, this actually says that each division corresponds to 2 micrometers. And this is a model 500C3, I believe. And this is typically used on a special stand that's able to compensate for temperature differentiation and stuff like that. Stuff way out of my pay grade. This, I believe I have a comparator stand around here somewhere that it's got a special design to it. Tom Lipton of Ox Tool did a whole series or a couple of videos where he got really in depth about talking about how, in particular, how the stand works, which is kind of interesting. So if you want to see that, I would suggest check out his channel and just search his channel for, I believe, comparator is what it would probably be under. This next indicator is, again, a very specialized indicator. It's a one of a kind. It's made only by one manufacturer, and this is called the Travadial. Trava dial. And what this indicator does is this indicator actually measures linear distance based on the rotation of this wheel right here. So you can see if I turn this wheel, you can actually see that this will continue to just turn around and around and around, and it basically can go, well, infinitely. It's not like a drop indicator where it's got a certain range of distance that it can travel. And the reason why this is made this way is this is made to be mounted on the carriage of your lathe, and then this wheel is supposed to rub up against or push up against the side of the ways, and as you rotate, as you move the carriage, the wheel will turn, and this is designed to give you a very accurate indication of how far the carriage has moved. Now this one here I bought off of Craigslist, and I initially was going to put it on my lathe, and then I discovered that, well, one of the problems is that I don't have the correct mount, so I'd have to make a special mount for it. And the other problem is, well, it's missing a dial right here, which these dials can be obtained, but they're crazy expensive money. This is just a dial to manually rotate this, to zero it, I guess. And then the other thing, which I'm not sure whether or not it's an issue or not, but this wheel right here, see how that moves? I don't know whether or not by design that's supposed to flop around like that. This whole shaft, look how much play there is here. But that might be by design because, again, don't forget, this is supposed to be, this wheel's supposed to contact the side of the ways, and then a little bit of preload is supposed to be on this. And once I preload it, it actually seems to work pretty well. So this might actually still be good. I think this might be the kind of thing I might end up just deciding to sell you know, as is, because it's missing parts and it's kind of beat up. But these are crazy expensive. Even used, they bring pretty damn good money. So I don't think I gave a heck of a lot for this thing. I gave under 50 bucks for this thing, I think. And the other reason I was thinking maybe I wouldn't hold on to this is because I could probably use one of my other indicators that has a really long travel on it, and just have that on a mount that I can move back and forth. And this last group of indicators that I'm going to talk about before I close out this first episode of this indicator series are the electronic indicators. So electronic indicators, when they're working properly and they've been calibrated, can be extremely accurate. Matter of fact, they're actually much more accurate than anything I need for my little shop here. That being said, I may end up keeping them just because, oddly enough, when they were new, they were probably outrageously expensive. But because of things like age and condition, some of these just aren't really worth that much anymore. Now, this drop indicator, this Mitutoyo drop indicator, actually was probably still, you know, very serviceable. I remember testing this and it works perfectly fine. I'm not really that big a fan of these digital type of drop indicators. I like to have the dial. I like to have that direct readout. I don't like numbers bouncing all around. Now, that being said, I guess that's because I'm thinking of the application wrong. So I wouldn't want to have this, say, mounted on a indicator holder and be using it, say, to indicate a part in a lathe or something like that. However, on the proper stand used on a surface plate, that's where a digital indicator like this can really shine, because of the ability to store and recall different readings. So that's where you might want an indicator like this. This one right here, this Ono Sokki, Onosokki, I believe is, I think it's Ono Sokki. It's a model EG133. This one actually works perfectly fine. I tested it. You know, I don't know, you know, it might be completely in need of calibration, but the point is that it seems to work correctly. The irony of this is that, you know, again, this was probably quite an expensive unit when it was new. Now, it actually doesn't have a really high value to it. Oddly enough, though, when I got it, it was on this stand. And what I came to find out later is that this stand is actually quite expensive and still commands good money. This is an Onosokki ST-022 stand, and I believe this block right here is a precision ceramic surface, and I guess that's what is one of the things that makes this stand really precise. You can also see it's got a really nice rack here. Nice rack. Anyways, the reason why I point this out is because I could actually, if I put this on eBay today, if I put this on eBay separate from the stand, I could actually get more money for the stand than I could for this digital indicator. Here's another example of an electronic indicator that was probably quite expensive when it was new, but now because of the age, it just doesn't have a really high value. These readouts show up on eBay from time to time, and I've seen them sit there with no bids on them. The key is this, I guess you would call this a transducer or a sending unit, for lack of a better term. The key is this device right here. These are harder to come by. I've seen these on other websites, companies that are selling commercial surplus of new old stock, and they want crazy money for this thing. I don't recall ever seeing any show up on eBay used. So this is a Sony Digital Gauge DE128R, and this actually was with this unit when I got it. So this plugs in. It's got a very unique type of interface here that plugs right into the back of this unit. And essentially, you put this in a stand, and you've got one heck of an accurate, and again, I say accurate, assuming that this didn't need any kind of recalibration and was working perfectly fine. You've got one heck of an accurate drop indicator. So I believe this thing actually has 2 channels, but since I only have the one sending unit, or the one indicator, or interface, or I'm sure I'm not calling this thing the correct name, but if I had 2 of these, I think I could actually be able to see one in one channel and one in the other channel, and then I think you can toggle which one of these shows up here. So this does stick a little bit. Oh, I see what's happening. It's storing whatever the max reading is. So I'm sure if I had the owner's manual, I would be able to know how to use this. But if I hit reset, 0 it, and then oh, look at that. So what is that? That's a 0.5 right there. That just came out of nowhere. But you get the idea. And then there's a print feature. You could actually send the output to a printer. So I don't know. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do with that. Maybe I'll actually keep that thing and I'll set it up, keep it near my surface plate. Now, here's an electronic indicator that is basically the genuine antique version of the thing I just showed you. I mean, the thing I just showed you is considered outdated. Look at this thing. This thing, you can see the white crusty mildew. All right. This is the actual indicator here. So you got the little feeler right there. And this is supposed to, I'm pretty sure this was supposed to mount onto this. I found this all in the same estate. This is a big Federal stand. You can see this is a model 2400 Federal Precision Height stand. So even if you didn't want to mess around with this antique indicator, this stand is actually a pretty nice stand. Now that I look at it more closely, this is clearly set up for a drop style indicator and not for this. So I wonder what this was supposed to mount on. I haven't tested this, tried it at all. You could see that this was really, in its day, probably a highfalutin device. You can see the deflection is 1/10,000th of an inch from there to there. It reminds me of the early Simpson meters. If you've ever seen an early Simpson voltmeter, the Simpson multimeters had like this Bakelite case. It's got this very Art Deco looking kind of cool design to it. I mean, if there's such thing as people who collect antique machinist indicators, this would be the cat's meow for somebody, because it's got a really cool look to it. This would be a really neat restoration project for somebody who did this kind of thing. You know, could see them get the stickers off of here, clean this all up. You know, this isn't broken. All right, enough of that. Federal Products Corporation. Really a cool piece. Oh, one last item. This is the other Federal item that I've got that is really kind of neat. This thing has what appears to be a drop indicator, but this drop indicator, unlike on like this hole gauge where it's a standard drop indicator that's just mounted in this special housing, which by the way is cracked right there because this is just plastic. So this was probably dropped. But anyways, this is not just a standard drop indicator. This actually, the body of this indicator is actually this special casting. You can actually see it extends up here. Okay, so it's an animal of a different, it's a horse of a different color. Anyways, this is, from the best that I can tell, this is a bench micrometer. Now, I know some of you guys are looking at this right now and you're going, that's not a bench micrometer. I know. It doesn't look like a bench micrometer. But the only things I've been able to find that are close to this thing were described as bench micrometers. So they're actually calling this block down here, which needs to really be cleaned up and lapped. They're actually calling this an anvil. And we've got this knob on the top here for adjustment. And then we've got, obviously, we've got some control over the range with this. This indicator is 0.0001, so this is a 0.10000th indicator. Then there's a rack and there's an adjustment knob so we can get a really coarse or gross adjustment here. This part right here, which swivels around, but I can't actually bring it all the way around because the anvil's in the way. But if I were to bring this, if I took the anvil off, I could bring this piece up and line up this slot with the rack so that I could then bring this up, and there's an adjustment knob to clamp it. I could clamp this at any height I want. And what I believe this is, I believe this is a stop, okay, that's adjustable to actually set how far back, so that when you put a piece on here to test it, that every time you slid it on to the anvil, you basically put it in the same exact position. This stop would keep it from being able to slide too far back. So you basically would have it in the same position every time. That's what I think this is. So this is in rough shape, but I would love to know what one of these things cost new. I got to believe this is crazy money. There's a model number on here, but I've done pretty extensive searching and haven't been able to find anything. And the funny thing is, you know what I haven't done yet, which is kind of silly, but I haven't gotten around to just calling them. Meagher Federal is right in, their headquarters, I believe, is still right in Providence, Rhode Island. It's one state away from me. So I think I should just call them, give them the information, and see whether or not they could tell me. The nearest I can figure is that this was something that was made special for some manufacturer. It was custom made for them, and probably at quite an expense. All right, so I'm going to end this episode here, and next time we pick up indicators, we'll probably move into the drop indicators. Take care.